on my phone, so just to let you all know. Today's topic is empowerment and diversity, and actually moving away from buzzword to actually having meaningful action. And we all know that diverse teams make much better decisions, they have better outcomes. But unfortunately, studies still show that 7% of German startups are led by mixed teams, and actually 85% of German startups are led by all male teams. So if we all know that this is such a great thing to do and to have, then why are we moving so slowly? So today, we've got an amazing lineup of speakers. I'm so excited to be able to speak to every one of them because, in my opinion, they're all power women, all working towards creating a diverse future in all of their different facets. So to start, I'd like everyone to maybe give a quick introduction to two-liner, what their name is and what they're doing. So maybe we start offline. So Karen, would you like to start?
Sure. Hi, thanks, Alina. Thanks, everyone. I'm Karen Kargar. I'm the CEO and founder of a startup here called Rising, here in Berlin, Kreuzberg. And we're a talent attraction agency for cities and companies. And our goal is to basically make life easier for globally mobile talent. We all know it's a difficult task. But today I'd like to specifically talk about Because Berlin, and that's a project that we run for Berlin Partner and the Senate, the same team that funds the Asia Berlin, funds our project, and I'd like to talk about that today and what we do. It's an English language portal to help people to get to Berlin.
Perfect.
Hi, I'm Tatjana Trujillo since the summer because I'm married. Thanks. I am business model innovation consultant at SAP, so my team is responsible to incubate startups internally. And I'm also diversity inclusion lead for our innovation unit. That's why I really love to combine these roles and drive, for example, venture diversity, inclusive leadership, also when it comes to startups and collaboration between corporates and startups. So really looking forward to this panel today.
Hi, my name is Christin Braun. I'm super excited to be here in person because actually it's my first real-life panel in a very, very long time. And I come from Nuremberg, where I work at Zollhof. Zollhof is a tech incubator, and that means that we do help digital startups to accelerate their businesses. And we are also, together with our colleagues from Medical Valley, part of an initiative by the federal German government called the eHub initiative, where I run the digital health hub. And it is really, we are on the verge of the startup world, but we also work with corporates like Novartis or Siemens, and also have the political aspect to it. So it's for me, it's really looking at the diversity and inclusion aspect from very different and diverse angles.
Thank you so much. And we'll move to online. We've got Mona. Would you like to start?
Absolutely. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, super. Hello, my name is Timona Borhanuddin. Everybody calls me Mona. That's how I like to be called as well. And I am currently working for the Technology Strategy and Advisory Department within Accenture. So I don't come two things that are new. I don't come from Berlin. Obviously, I'm in the online version, and I don't come from the startup field. Nevertheless, we all, small or large organizations, face a similar problem of becoming more inclusive, becoming more diverse. Based on my background, I came here in Germany 13 years ago, and throughout the various career levels, I've faced different organizations, and I've realized how important that is, how important inclusive and diverse workforce is. And that's how I have dedicated part to my normal job as an inclusion and diversity ambassador for Accenture, and I run or co-lead the Frankfurt Pride Hub.
Awesome, thank you so much. And last but not least, Sabrina.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Sabrina. I was born and raised in China, but now I'm based in Hong Kong. I came to Hong Kong about 15 years ago, and I was mostly involved in startups. I helped build 2 startups before, one in food tech and another one in digital marketing. And then as a volunteer, I was the co-chair of the Gay Games, which is happening in 2023. It's going to be the world's largest multi-sports event. So everyone is welcome to join, not just LGBTQ community, but it's open to all. It's my first time at the Asia Berlin Summit, so I'm super excited to be in the same panel as all of these like-minded female entrepreneurs and to discuss more topics on diversity. Thank you.
That sounds fantastic. Thank you so much, Sabrina. So now I'd like to go into specific details within diversity, because we've all heard from everyone they're all working in different facets of diversity. So I'd like to start with Karen. I think the cause you're working on specifically is so close to my heart. Having moved to Berlin, not knowing the language a few years ago, it's really hard to settle here. So I'd love to hear a bit more about exactly what you do and maybe the challenges you've overcome and what you think everyone else can do to make people feel more included when they move to a different country. Sure.
Yeah. I came here in 1994 on my own without speaking German, so a lot of the work I do has a lot to do with my own story. And the people from my team as well came here from other countries. So we work, as I said, we have a project called Because Berlin, and we work very closely with Berlin Partner, which is a public-private company here that helps, grow Berlin economically, and the Senate. And they asked us a few years ago to come up with an idea to talk about Wirtschaftsfreiheit in Berlin. Why should people from around the world come here? And in particular, we're talking to people in countries where they can't live and work as freely as they would like to, whether that's for their identity or the political situation in their country or the economic situation in their country. And we built this whole project. We called it Because Berlin, because Wirtschaftsfreiheit Berlin was a little too tough for the global community. And we created a website, and our website has social media channels. We have, I'll talk more in detail about exactly what we do. And we go out to the world, and we let them know that we're here. We let them know that they're welcome. And we have a welcome team, and that's pretty special. We have an email address, and then they call you if you need help, wherever you are in the world. And if you want to come to Berlin, we'll help you. But that's exaggerated. We help as much as we can. We're a small team, and then we filter. So being from the city, an official city service funded by the Senate, our services are free. So we figure out what's going on. You might need a visa. You might just want to know, is it safe for me to come to this country and live in this city? And we bring you to the right channels. So whether it's for your visa or how to get your startup here. Last year we had quite a lot of people in trouble here as well who couldn't go home. So we're kind of this help, this central help center for people needing help. And I'll talk more later about exactly what we do, but this organically grew into a platform for diversity and inclusion, because you can't go to the world and tell them to come here if it's not a diverse and inclusive place. So we started doing more work about that. We extended our website to include a diversity page, and I'll tell you a little bit more later about the talks we're doing, and we're actively building the welcoming culture of Berlin.
Yeah, that's absolutely fantastic. I wish I had known about this.
Don't we all wish it was there back then?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think instead of discussing it later, I'd actually like to know a bit more now. Like, how do you think this has changed over time to include or foster discussions related to diversity?
Yeah, well, one bit of luck we had last year with the pandemic is that we suddenly had to do digital events. And we had planned to go around the world and have physical events. And we panicked, like everyone, and said, oh no, what are we going to do now? And then I became this digital moderator of events. And fortunately, we were talking about today, this was good in some senses, because we could just talk to people around the world, communicate around the world. And the more we talked, we realized, we'd had one on female entrepreneurship, a town hall call, and then another group would say, what about us? We'd really like to talk on your panel, on your platform as well. And we included other groups. We had one focused on Brazilian entrepreneurs, because somebody said, wow, that's a big group in Berlin and they're not getting heard enough. And we know in Brazil, a lot of women have trouble starting their own companies. So I think that was the one, Mano from my team. We had an amazing following from Brazil, because a lot of women were really excited to hear about that. We had one for the LGBTIQ plus community. Some of the people who are here today, Athena Lam, who I just bumped into, was on that. And it just kept spreading. The next group, Rainer Seider, was on one of our calls. We got a lot of views for that call because he's Rainer Seider. He's the official, he's an official guy. And we talked about growing international teams and how to do it right, how much has changed in Berlin since back then. He and I were talking about the old days and how things are changed now. And I can tell you more details, but I want to give the other people
Yeah, that's really interesting to hear. And it's interesting to see that, like, you're absolutely right. You need to make sure that this is a home for people who feel included. Otherwise, why would they choose to move to Berlin specifically? I'd like to move on to Tatjana then. I'd love to hear more about your work at SAP and how you found it and how you think others are either helping or how they could help you to foster diversity at SAP. Mm-hmm.
So I look at this topic like from 3 perspectives, let's say. So top down, leadership has a lot of responsibility there, from bottom up as well as from partner angle. So, I mean, today I would rather focus on, let's say, the partner angle between like corporate startups and especially Asia Berlin. And what I can say with my work in our innovation unit, like we support internal entrepreneurs as well as external startups on all kinds of topics around the world. We recently opened also our SAP IO Foundry in Shanghai, in Tokyo. We have more coming up. And I just really want to say here that I believe that corporates and startups, especially when it comes to D&I, can learn so much from each other. As, for example, we have a global team working on diversity inclusion strategies, which is nice, but we are a huge ship, right? So in order to trigger new processes, be more agile, we can learn so much from startups. With, I think, maybe just 10% of startups have a strategy. So we could support on that angle, and they could be the ones where we can pilot speedboats and see, okay, how could we learn from them and include that in our work? And just wanted to really express here that also here at the Asia Berlin Summit, I'm really super inspired already just by walking in here. I directly met so many innovative mindsets and people being open to collaborate on innovation and diversity. So thank you for this platform here.
Great. Okay. Yeah. I completely agree. I think startups and corporates can easily work together to actually play to each other's strengths and see how we can work together to create more diverse teams. I'd like to move on to Anne now. Could you tell us a bit more about what you're doing specifically related to diversity?
Yeah, I can tell you what I almost didn't do. I joined Zollhof 3 years ago, and I did actually meet my very great boss, Benjamin, on a panel. And that night he wrote me an email and he asked me, so Anne, we are looking for somebody, could you imagine joining us? And I was really hesitant because all of my professional life I've worked in IT. So I've spent 6.5 years in a B2B software development company where even the marketing team that I was part of, besides of me, was completely male. Like everybody, even the working student was male. So even the typically female jobs were male. And I came from that environment. And then Benjamin asked me, do you want to work for Zollhof Tech Incubator? And I heard that and I was like, I'm not sure if I want to do another tech role just because I'm kind of fed up with being in an environment where I'm always like the odd one out as a female. So when I joined Zollhof, you mentioned the numbers. We had a female founder quote of 10%. And also if you go beyond just gender, also if you look at maybe educational backgrounds, it's white guys from the middle class that are working in the startup world predominantly, and I just thought, okay, like we are here to make innovation happen, and everybody looks the same, everybody wears the same the same t-shirts and the same outfits, everybody I don't know, it's just very, very similar, and I don't want that to be what we represent. And so I knew I have to change that. And a couple of things that people always think, okay, what do we have to do? We have to have a program, or we have to have an advisory board. And I'm not a big fan of that, just simply because I think it's not a good idea to silo the aspect of diversity and inclusion, but it needs to be something that has to be thought in a very broad sense. And something that I just did, for example, I was just getting on my colleagues' nerves. So at Zollhof, we do so many events. And when I joined, most of our speakers were male. And I thought, no, that can't happen. So I grew our network, and I made sure that we have female experts and that we have diverse experts being on our stage. And I'm just pretty proud that in 2018, when I joined, we had a female speaker quota of 10%. Last year we had one of 52%. So we now have to make sure that we get men the stage as well. And it's the same thing for example, for our startup support program. So we run one every year. And when I joined, it was 10% as well. Now we have a female founder quota of around 40%, which is not perfect, but at least it shows that there has been a development. And it starts very early. Like, we do work a lot with students, for example. So we have an entrepreneurial support program for students that runs 3 months. And at the beginning, we had really trouble finding female students. It was always pretty international, I must say, but it was always male students mostly. Nowadays, we have like a quota of 50 to 70% female students who join us for that program, simply because there have been role models. And it's just really a mouth-to-mouth communication thing, where one female talent tells the other about the program and says, you can go there and it's going to be a great experience. And then, of course, we also back then had a female program lead, which also is super important to gain visibility. And another thing is, it starts with the little things, like how is the wording that you use, for example, on your website? What kind of pictures do you use? Like, are you making sure that your organization really embodies like a diverse mindset? And it's not about positioning the one female colleague that you have in the middle of the picture that you post on LinkedIn, but it's about really making an effort and be authentic about it. That will, I think, that will be what will, be visible for other people as well.
Oh, some of the things you said just gave me goosebumps. I'm so inspired that you managed to create such a big change in such a small time, but it also shows you when people say there's not enough, well, clearly there are. You just need to put the effort into actually making that change. I see that with my personal startup, that I have no problem receiving very diverse applications for recruitment because seeing is believing, as you said. If you see people who look like you, you're more likely to apply. So great stuff. I'm going to move it on to Mona because when we spoke earlier, I really like the things you said about diversity not being just about gender, but so much more. So could you tell us a bit more about what you're doing at Accenture?
Absolutely happy to. And I mean it. I mean, I think we all face challenges regarding diversity, and how, when we say how do we move from being a buzzword to really coming into action, we need to break down that word. And looking at diversity and just looking at gender and your gender ratio, does it really help? Are you becoming diverse and inclusive? Is that the gap that we're looking at? Or are there more patterns to it? Or are there more dimensions to it? So within Accenture, we've got 6 pillars where we say, okay, you've got gender as an aspect, where we need to look at male and female. You've got ethnicity as an aspect. You've got the pride community, the LGBTQI plus community. You've got people with disabilities. You've got mental health, and you've got cross cultures. So these are pillars that currently build up. Are they going to stay the same today? No, because the more we change with the era or the centuries or years, and we grow and we become different, more pillars might come. There might be less pillars, but that's the whole point. We are all changing, and the market is changing. The demands are changing. And as a technology firm, you need to look at, okay, what do we want to offer to our clients, and what are the topics we need to tackle? And we need to look at skill set. Who brings in what skill sets, and how do we achieve a diversity in the skills that we want to have, in the type of people we want to have, and not look at male and female. And I understand it is important. We've also set as Accenture a goal because of our main CEO, or the chief executive officer, Julie Sweet, has set goals to achieve 50% female till 2025. So we've got hardcore goals. And yes, we've also talked about, I think Tatjana mentioned about leadership buy-in. From the leadership top down, you need to set goals and say, okay, I believe in inclusion and diversity. I find it's valuable. And now how do we get it broken down to the actions? Look at the internal activities. What are awareness sessions? What are recruitment sessions? How do we work with our third-party vendors? Anybody who is being not so inclusive, do we want to work with them? Do we want to have such clients? Do we want to work with outside people? That's an internal decision, policies that we need to decide on, stay fixed to it. And then how do we bring bottom up all the people in and get their mindset changed? So you have to work on both ways. You have to look at all aspects, and you have to look at where's the gap and how do I close those gaps. And one more thing that I think I would have wanted to add is that coming from a very male-dominating country, I think Germany was the place where I felt as a female very accepted, very respected. I can voice out my opinions, and I don't have a negative lashback, or I don't need to fear. And I think we also need to look at the positive aspects this Western culture gives us. And I know there is a lot more to do, but again, I think what Anna said, you need to do little steps. And like I had to ask myself, I feel very comfortable, but what can I do more? And what are things that I can do more? And I understand there is a lack of female gender in our community or in our pride community. But what can we do more? What are the small initiatives that we can bring in within our working environment so that we can make those changes?
Yeah, I think you bring up a really good point there about the difference between Western and Eastern culture, and actually we are really privileged to be here and to speak our mind and not have negative lashback if we do so. I'd like to move on to Sabrina. It'd be great to hear your work specifically within the diversity sector.
Okay, thank you, Alina. I started my career in a very traditional banking industry. And I felt I couldn't be myself at work because the culture is very rigid. And that's when I started my own company with a few partners. And then instantly the work culture just changed. I can bring myself to work. And when I joined the next startup, which is a little bit bigger, I still remember when my partner were discussing with me the final offers, I empower myself because I still remember the painful experience I had at the bank. I wanted to make sure that the workplace that I'm at will accept me as who I am. So I asked him, how inclusive is the team? And he was shocked. He doesn't even know what that means. But then very quickly he picked himself up and he said, we're very diverse. We have, people from 10 different countries, and I don't really care what you do. things like that, which well, answered my question. But then the next morning, very early morning, he sent me a message. He said, I understand how hard it is for you to ask that question, especially in Asian country, in Asian culture. And let's work hard so that nobody in our company ever has to ask this question again. And because of his gesture, I accepted his offer to be the COO of the company, and I stayed in that company for as long as I could. So this is an example that I experienced. And then right now I work in Alibaba, which is the largest e-commerce company here in China, in Asia. And I do think there's a huge difference between startups and corporations. And when it comes to recent years development, I do see these organizations are putting up efforts to mitigate bias when it comes to recruitment. But the actual implementation of the hiring, the retention of the diverse work group is still lacking. And sometimes it's not intentional. For example, I'm not sure if you guys heard of the term 996 working culture in China. It basically means you work 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. 6 days a week. And this is very common in a lot of the big tech companies, let alone some of the fast growing startups. But then that creates a barrier because think about it, when you hire people based on this culture, who would apply for jobs like this? At the end of the day, you will hire a bunch of adrenaline-driven young people, which surely will help the company grow, but it also creates a very singular representation of the demographic. So yes, age discrimination is also an issue in startups, especially in Asia, because diversity has all faces and any label is a label. Myself, I try to promote LGBT culture as an individual, especially Asian lesbian, which is why a few years ago I volunteered to to join the management team of the gay games. And I questioned myself when I did that, because I was like, oh, that's so cliche, like, yes, I'm gay, therefore I should join the gay games. But then again, I asked myself, if I don't do it, who else is going to do it? If I don't step out and take the lead, who's going to do that for me?
Absolutely. Again, I'm getting goosebumps again, hearing everything everyone's saying. So inspirational to hear everyone's stories. I want to open this up now, so whoever feels like chiming in. What do you all think other people can do in the workplace to actually foster diversity? I mean, you've all done it in your various roles, but what do you think other people can do if they want to make a difference?
So, yeah, I'm happy to start. So, actually, three tips and tricks, let's say, we found out over the years. So, first of all, be the one who you want to attract. So, it goes in the direction you were talking about regarding when we found out that we can't attract diverse startups if we are, we look the same and we're the ones choosing. This is not very diverse. So we had to be ourselves in the incubators around the world, diverse teams in order to attract this. Next one is cast wider. So we have found out, a common thing is that people say, oh, I don't think that we have a diverse pipeline. There are not too many candidates and so on. But nobody goes beyond that. So why is that? And this can start, for example, realizing that we cooperate with a lot of universities that only have white people with a lot of income, right? Maybe we should start, why are we just collaborating with them? We should start collaborating with others and cast wider, not the normal ones, right? And a third point is definitely incentives and KPIs. I have to say that goals and incentives, they just drive behavior. So if you have the right ones in place, and this definitely starts with managers. So I'm still looking for a time when the D&I KPIs are also in the goal plans of every manager. So it's being tracked and reported, because unfortunately that's a way to incentivize people to just, drive this topic naturally. So really, really important topics, and I think these three tips and tricks hopefully can help others interested in this topic.
Yeah, I agree. I think this whole excuse of there's not enough is not good enough. And I think that means if there isn't, then what are you actually doing to look for other people? Because there are. It's just you need to make a bit more of an effort or really rethink how you're doing business. Anyone else want to discuss what they think they can do or what they think other people can do to foster diversity?
I think generally what is important is to make it clear that diversity and inclusion is not about charity, because the narrative is always like a bit like, yeah, it would be nice, but it's just a nice to have and not a must have. But it has to become clear that it's a business necessity, really. And I think it's super important to also bring men in, because a lot of diversity initiatives in companies, they are targeted towards women, and also they are targeted to kind of fix women, and I just don't think it's the right approach. And we have to face it. Nowadays, it's mostly men who sit in power positions, so we have to bring them in. We have to make them our allies, and we have to make sure that if we talk about diversity, that next time we have somebody who doesn't identify as a female maybe sit with us and talk about it, to really not only talk about it, but to really get into action. And I just a couple months ago, one of our startups, he called me and said, Anna, you know, if I would found another company, I would never do it again as an all-male founder team. And I was so confused, because it's the first time I ever heard something like that. And I asked, yeah, Valentin, but why do you say that? And he said, first thing he said, you know, we lose so much time in meetings just because of our egos. That were his words. But he also said that his target group, whenever they talk to customers, they have, it's so much faster if they have a female contact person, because they were having a sustainable business model that obviously spoke a lot to women. So they always had a much faster sales cycle with females. And he said that he just thinks that they, as a male founding team, probably have something that they forgot in the production cycle, in the development of their product and service, given that they are just males catering to female needs, obviously, and that he just thinks that there's a lack of quality in his product at the end of the day. And he also mentioned that it's just so much harder to find people who want to work in a startup where you only see male faces on the website. So I think that's a necessity, really, to make sure that everybody is aware that it's a business necessity to foster diversity and not a charity.
And I'll jump in on the cities. So we have a company, but I won't go in that direction. I'll stick with cities. So basically every city in the world needs to be Cuz Berlin, right? I mean, this is my advice to every city in the world, especially. We also saw last year people moving to other cities in the US, people moving from New York to smaller cities. And these cities are going to be overwhelmed with the new arrivals, and they have no experience helping them. It's, you know, people from all over the world. So we advise all cities to work the way we do. And I like the business model because, unfortunately, we're doing this because we know it's the right thing to do, right? And we burn for this subject, and we know it's the right thing to do. We've had this experience. But it's also economically the smart thing to do, and you have to let your communities know. So, and I would like to do more in Berlin, for example, and let the local communities know it's not only the right thing to do to be open-minded and welcoming. It's there was a recent report that Germany needs 500,000 skilled professionals for this generation to get their pension, and if we don't welcome all these skilled professionals here and treat them well and help them to start lives here, it's an economic problem as well. So I'm glad you brought that up. It reminded me that I wanted to mention that today.
That's really interesting. I think, like, just personally coming from the UK, I'm sure everyone knows about Brexit, and everyone knows about the labour issues they're having now and the huge unemployment rates. And you're absolutely right. If you don't make people feel welcome where they are, they will leave. And that's exactly what happened because of Brexit. And now the UK is pretty upset that they don't have enough workers to fill the jobs, where they were saying that the workers were taking away their jobs. So it just shows you actually how important it is to foster those people and make sure they feel at home where they are. Mona, Sabrina, I don't want to leave you guys out. I just want to know what you think. And have you ever come across tips or things that you think other people can do to foster diversity within your workplaces or also outside of the workspace?
Sabrina, should I start, or do you?
Yes, please go ahead.
Because, I mean, a lot of the points were already talked about, and yes, diversity and inclusion, it boosts innovation, it's a business economic effect, it's a political effect, it's a societal effect, so we all know it needs to be done, and we've also covered a lot of points. I think one thing that we have not yet discussed is educate yourself and others and getting those allies, right? I mean, how do you get those allies? How do you get to know what diversity is? And I keep on preaching, it's not just gender, it's everything. I, as a woman, have a different kind of an experience as a male who is from China, or a male who's from Africa, or a female, a brown, bisexual. So you have so many different kinds of layers, and we need to educate ourselves and ensure that we are becoming diverse, because I also fall in gaps where I'm not being inclusive. And is inclusive because of color, or is it inclusive because the person not speaking up? How do I have in a team? And because we've already had so many examples, I've also been in teams with full-blown males, but I've realized, okay, some of them are talking a lot and the others are not talking. And if I want to include all the opinions and make a decision based on what they're all saying, I need to tell the other ones who's not speaking up, hey, speak up. What do you think? What's your opinion? So we need to be inclusive, and we need to educate ourselves. What does diversity and inclusiveness means for us and for others, and educate others? And I think the second thing is make it relatable. From the pandemic, we have learned everybody could relate to the lockdown, to the restrictions that we had, let's put it that way. To every restriction that we had, we couldn't travel, we couldn't go out, we couldn't go to the office, we didn't have supplies. So we all globally could relate to each other's problems. And what diversity does is it doesn't help you relate to somebody else's problems because of a gap. So if you tell a man to go back home and he goes in his paternal leave and the problems he faces with a kid, or how do you get that level of a female that's facing the problem to a male that's facing a problem? How do you get those levels of, oh, I am bisexual and I am walking with my headscarf, holding hands with a female? How does that look like to somebody who's just white and a white lady couple, and nobody's looking at them, they're just looking at us because she's wearing a scarf? So there are so many different levels, and the more you make it relatable, and there are programs that does it. I mean, I'm the technology advisory perspective here. There are technology, there are virtual reality programs that help you understand somebody else's problem. You can't change skin color today, or you cannot change yourself, but to jump into somebody's shoes or to slip into somebody's shoes in order to become more empathic, to understand, okay, that's the problem they're talking about. Now I see the issue. Because I don't think anybody's against anybody. Like, there is no such thing as, oh, I have a general hate, or have a general, oh, I don't want to include females, or I don't want to include the LGBTQ people. I don't think people always have a negative intent, but it's just they need to be made aware of it. And that's why I say make it relatable.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's about being, is it okay now? Yeah. It's about being empathetic, right? Really trying to put yourself in that person's shoes and understand how they're feeling. And there's been instances where maybe I felt uncomfortable. I don't know whether it's due to my race or what, but I have noticed then some people say, oh, no, that's not a problem. It's in your head. And I think actually putting people in that position where they feel that it's their problem, and that actually didn't happen to them, is also not okay, because you're not addressing the problem, or you're thinking it doesn't really exist. Sabrina, I'd like to hear from you what you were going to speak about earlier.
So I agree with what everyone else said, resonate with me a lot. So for me, I think what we all can do is, first of all, be aware of diversity. Don't just assume that everyone is just like you. I've made several inappropriate comments just because I assumed the person I'm dealing with on the other side is just like me, or is what I think that person would be. And then it turns out to be different race, different religion. And then I just regretted making comments without considering all different kind of facets. And then the second thing we can do is just to be yourself. I think I agree with other panelists was saying. By being yourself, we set up a good role model for other people. And you never know, you could inspire someone who's just like you. And I think for all of us today to be on this panel to share about our personal experience will set a good model for someone who's afraid of coming out, or who's afraid of being a female entrepreneur who asks for that $1 million in terms of funding. And then lastly, because I'm from a relatively reserved culture, I was brought up by a very traditional parents. To be honest, my parents are based in China, so I'm not completely out to them. So whenever, even though in Hong Kong, I'm participating in all kinds of this LGBT activities, when it comes to the end of the day, when I call my mom, I am not able to tell her what I'm doing. I'm not able to tell her what an amazing panel I've participated today because of the topic. And I feel pretty sad about that. And then for a reserved culture, or for example, in a lot of Asian countries, I think this is the case. And we need the support, not just from people around us. I think one thing companies should do is the big corporates should stand out and initiate programs that helps employees and their families with diverse background, because it's like a recognition from a credible institute if the individual themselves are not able to step out that comfort zone to do that.
Absolutely. I mean, sorry that I'm sort of chipping in right now because this is something that really touched me. I will not be able to call up my mom and tell her that I do what I do at work or what I do and the initiatives. And so that's why that just resonated with me, because you can never go back home and talk about your work. And again, that was the reason why I joined this panel, was due to its connection to Asian companies. And you just said something really powerful. We as corporations, no matter small or big, startups or not startup, if we are connected to such countries and communities, I think that's one key thing that we need to advocate from a Western culture. I don't know if I say we should be responsible for it. We should feel responsible for it, because even within my company right now, I work with Indian teams, and I have to think twice before I talk to my Indian teams that are sitting within Accenture in India. How much can I reveal? And that is already within my company. This is inclusive. Like, I need to train my Indian teams to understand who I am and accept me who I am. And they do it because they say, okay, the workplace, I've got a certain kind of a protection. But if not at my workplace, where else? And my company needs to give me that protection, that I can talk about it. So it's very crucial that we push it towards that continent.
Absolutely. Yeah, I resonate so much with everything everyone is saying. As we only have about 7 minutes left, I just want to see if anyone has any specific questions related to this topic. If not, then we'll go back to the panelists. But does anyone have any questions?
I like the thing where you said that just like the way greenwashing poses a threat to sustainability in general, gender tokenism is also a big, I think, a big problem where you're posing, women entrepreneurs or women leaders are used as sort of a photo op opportunity. So I think that's one thing that really resonated with me, because also you see it's a very common thing. I don't know how many of you have observed this, that during the Pride Month, all the organization will put all the rainbow flag and this and that. But it's every day it's happening. They're a part of community. Diversity is a very important element for society. And my question to you would be that how can one identify that, or what is the best way to identify that this particular organization who are just raising pride flags during just for a week or so, or they are genuinely interested in diversity as a topic, or how can they incorporate in their operations or decision making process?
I think that's a great question, and I think especially during Pride Month, we saw that a lot. And also, for example, my working student, she came up to me and said, Anna, let's include that on our social media channels too. And I said, you know what? Tell me about our initiatives, our LGBTQI initiatives. It's not that we are not an inclusive place per se, but it's also not something that I feel that we have pushed enough to label ourselves with like a flag for a month. So I said, no, I don't think that would be authentic or sincere to do that. And I think there were so many examples. For example, BMW, who put on the rainbows in some countries, but in others, like Saudi Arabia, for example, they didn't. Surprise, surprise. So I think you can pretty much spot there who is sincere and who is authentic and who isn't. But I think it is, of course, it's tough because they don't always, it's not always that obvious. So you kind of have to get, I guess, a feeling for it, and you have to maybe try to get in touch with people who work there and who are maybe not like a white man or even a white woman like I am.
If I may add, because pinkwashing is a topic I work for within our company as well, and how do we ensure it's not pinkwashing? And one good example, what she just said, is also talk to the people from the company to really understand, is it really being pinkwashed? And the others are, you've got now, which is great, you've got now authorities that work independent from the company. So you've got the way you do Wirtschaftsprüfung, financial auditing. There's something called pride auditing. So you have certifications of companies, and you can see which top 10 DAX companies have gotten rankings. So based on their internal policies, based on their awareness, based on how they recruit, how they train, community events, internal initiatives. So it's a huge catalog of questions that the company needs to fill out. And based on those audit rankings, you can always see, okay, which company is ranking where. There's something going on right now in Germany. There are 2 independent authorities that do that. And you can always look at the company, are they doing it just in June, July, and August? And are they doing it just for one area, which is also something just Anna mentioned. Look at the whole year long, because yes, LGBTQI is not just about June and not just about CSD and not just about Pride Month. It goes on during the whole year, and you can see which companies are dedicating to, is it just a yearly thing or is it just a monthly thing? And is it important to color and change your logos or during the Pride Month? Oh yes, it's still important. The more visibility you show, even if it's pinkwashing, the more awareness you get. You still make people look. You still make, oh wow, glitter, oh wow, unicorn. Why? Because there's still so many people who don't even know what the rainbow color stands for. So yes, you shouldn't be doing it just in June, but at least you're doing it.
Absolutely. Okay, we have 2 more minutes. So any last questions before we do closing remarks? Yes, please.
Microphone?
Oh, okay.
It's just a very easy question. What you just told was more or less for big companies and DAX companies, and there is a scoring. But what about startups or smaller companies where you even don't know who to talk to get a feeling, because you can't just go through the floors, knock at the doors and say, how is the peer community in your company? About startups where maybe 100, 200 people working. So how to identify their spirit of openness for diversity? I think that probably there will be a solution, but I think it's a dilemma for most of German companies because they are not ranked
You know what? I would always go back to good old social media stalking, because on LinkedIn you can just see the members of a company, and if there is a startup that has 50 employees, there's a good chance that the biggest chunk of them is on LinkedIn, and then you can just see for yourself who's working there.
What about Tatjana? I think you probably have something to say because you work with startups quite closely, right?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, for you, it was more like a question in the direction of access to experts or access to a community or an open community.
It was a question that follows the question: how do you know before working for a company whether it's a diverse and open company, which is not maybe ranked by Urlan or whatsoever, where you don't have transparency, where you don't have a kind of queer group or whatsoever, where you can really find easily online. So how to identify the people to talk to know whether it's really an open, diverse, and queer-friendly company or not.
So I mean, apart from social media stalking and definitely website stalking on their company's strategy and so on, I think HR plays a huge role in all of that. And if you have like skilled HR people who are actually telling you that they have maybe certain policies in place, even to say, we want to have at least one female interviewee or interviewer, we want to do this and that. And if they can answer just that by your first contact with the company, and that then can tell you, yes, you know what, this is our strategy, it's very important to us, and we do this and this. This is already giving you some impression if they have thought about it, or if they just tell you, like, I don't know what you're talking about, you know? So just be open to that, ask HR and see if they have something in place already. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to do, honestly. I mean, that's what I meant with incentives and KPIs. We still need to make this more priority for management at any level, right? Because it's nice if everybody is like just up for any nice KPI, yeah, let's do it, and so on, but nobody's actually tracking it and driving it and being responsible for it. So a lot to do, but yeah, really inspiring to talk about this topic with you here.
Great. So we're actually out of time now, but I know there was one more question. So I think if it's really short, we could fit it in.
I just wanted to talk about sort of how this conflicts with the idea of culture fit, especially for startups. When you have a small team, early to be hired, you tend to go with people who share a culture, potentially, or share life experiences. How would you address that?
I was talking about cities today only, but we're a startup, a very small one, and we're going through that right now. And I'm the sole female founder, but I'm from the States, and it's true. The first people, Manon's my first hire, and she's from France, and we're growing, and hopefully we'll be growing rapidly very soon. And we're talking about that right now, and it is difficult because we have 3 advisors right now. One was a former Google guy, you know. We have a finance person from Boston, Massachusetts, which is where I'm from, and I've known her since I was 5. And it's true, when we really make that leap to hire the next level, and we talk about it a lot as a team, I have proof, and we're going to have to stretch that and consider from the very beginning. We're very small. We started at the end of 2019, and we're really working on it. We're trying to come up with the HR strategies, but right now I'm the HR department and the hire and the everything, and so I'm trying to put those strategies together, and I can't wait to have an HR team that goes forward with it. But it's definitely difficult because we're exhausted, and we're just trying to move forward. We're trying to grow. We're trying to survive, and at the same time we're trying to address everybody's individual needs and everybody's sensitivities. And we're doing it. We're tired, and we're trying to, and we're doing it. And we're quite diverse for the size of our team, and we hope to continue. But I think my message is, as small as you are, you've got to do it. You've got to do it from the beginning. And there's no time to say, no, we'll do that later. We'll do that when we're 100 people. That's probably too late. So it's worth doing the work at the beginning.
Absolutely. Maybe one easy way, I'm always shocked that people put pictures on their CVs in Germany, because in the UK you would never do that. So maybe that's an easy way to just tell people don't apply with a picture, because it definitely creates bias. So just a quick one. Anyway, thank you all so much for having us all today. Really appreciate it. And I hope that you took something away from this talk. And thank you so much, Mona, Sabrina, Anna, Tatjana, and Karen, for your fantastic insights. We're all really inspired to speak to all of you, and I'd love to connect after and stay in touch.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.